Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. I'm Will, that's Blake. Today we're here to talk about some Critical Role episode. Kind of muted.
Yeah.
My voice just went away, but episode 50 since that
Well,
cut out.
I made sure not to say anything because I thought I'm sure it's just me that you cut out for, but I was trying to just let you go because I have a habit of screwing up our intro. So, and now I've talked about it.
It would have been a good time to butt in because I don't know what happened there, but yeah,
episode 50.
That's right,
man. We made it. We made it to episode 50.
Yeah,
50 episodes of campaign 3.
Yeah, which I guess, I mean, there's not one every week because of various things, but we're over a year deep now, right?
Yeah, we hit a year, I think, in the fall.
Okay,
so it's been a while.
Yeah, been a while. But so yeah,
this is
Solstice.
This is the most Critical Role we've ever watched.
What do you mean?
I just wanted to say a statement. Just see.
I was going to say, because technically every episode we watch is the most Critical Role we've ever watched.
Bro, man, magician over here. You're right.
It's like that. You're the oldest you've ever been and the youngest you'll ever be in this moment right now.
I kind of dislike I know you kind of razz me for like things that I don't really like too much, but I don't really like that kind of stuff. Like I remember when I worked at summer camp, the person who ran the camp would be like, "This is the best week ever. You know why?" And I'd be like, "Why?" And they'd be like, "Because it's the only one we got." And I'd be like, "But it's not the only one we got. We have several more weeks." And my wife would be like, "He means like this is the only one of this week that we have." And I'd be like, "Yeah, but it's like factually not true. We have more weeks." Yeah. So,
well, I'm anyway. With you on that take. I wouldn't necessarily equate it to what I just said. I feel like they're a little bit different.
I don't know. I feel like we're kind of vibing together and how, just the tomfoolery of these kind of, weird sentences.
Yeah. That's basically like 50% of our brand, if not more.
True.
Probably.
Definitely more.
Yeah.
But yeah, episode 50, man. I personally have never made it this far into a campaign.
You know what? Okay, yeah. I'm glad you brought us back there because I was going to circle us there as well. It's cool that, and I mean, I've never had anyone besides just, random people on the internet to talk about with. So this is the deepest I've ever been, watching a campaign with someone. So yeah, this is fun.
It's getting kind of intimate now.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Glad we went on this journey together and with all of you as well, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then is there an anniversary coming up for Critical Role?
Yeah, this week is the freaking 8-year anniversary, which has blew my mind.
Yeah, wow.
I don't know crazy. How it's been that like we're still 2 years away, but encroaching upon a decade of Critical Role, which is just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I know we were saying episode 50 is going to be a massive one, and I feel like we're still on the cusp of that. But now I feel like I'm on the anniversary episode, like what's going to happen?
Yeah. How crazy. So, I mean, it seems like it's like the Solstice is not 100%, I guess, but almost definitely falling next episode, which, what crazy coincidental timing. TPK on the 8-year anniversary. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I guess should we jump into it then, or?
Yeah. The quick plug for the 5K subscriber giveaway we're doing. I'll just leave it at that. It's pretty self-explanatory. When we get to 5K, there's a giveaway. So
we'll figure it out.
Yeah. If you haven't subscribed yet, maybe that entices you. Other than that,
Worlds Beyond Number.
Beyond Number.
Yeah, we're gonna try to stick to it. I've watched. Well, we realized we listened to 2 different things, but Will's finished episode 1. I've almost finished episode 1, and this is the audio campaign coming from a few of the Dimension 20 peeps doing their kind of own thing currently. But I don't know if that description does it justice or not. But
yeah, real quick, it's like it's audio only, so it's different to Critical Role in that there is no like video you can watch if you want to. But Brennan Lee Mulligan, Erica Ishii, Abria Iyengar, and Lou Wilson are the dynamic. I was gonna say duo, but quad pod for
Yeah.
this, and we'll talk more about it. But having watched or listened to episode 1, I really liked it. So for you guys that are watching this video that are clearly Critical Role fans, I would recommend checking it out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Um, only other thing, we got our Last of Us stuff still coming down the pipeline as well, and I think that's it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um yeah, so I guess without further ado, let's jump into our discussion and recap. And if this is your first time watching us, we like to recap each episode of Critical Role before we dive into our proper discussion. And we actually cut that recap out and host it separately on YouTube for your convenience. So if you find yourself on that recap video and you want to hear our full thoughts, that will be linked down in the description below. So let's dive into it here. If I can pull up my notes. There we go. Okay. So this is episode 50 of Critical Role Campaign 3, Red Moon Rising. So
Feels like an anime title or something.
For sure. So we pick up with the crew, and it is the dawn of the final day, and it is time to plan. So as always, there's a bunch of back and forth on what should we do, what should we try. And one of the things they kind of ultimately land on is like, well, and this is something they've been thinking about, is this like bomb plan where they have this bomb they got from Mimahara Joe, and they're just gonna like crash it into the key. So they're like, we could do this, but we probably would need like cloud cover, and like, do we really want to be dependent on the weather? So as they're talking this out, they're like, well, let's go get Ira, the Nightmare King, and see what he brings to this equation. So they go and get him, and one of the first things they ask are like, you're old. Have you been part of these solstices in the past? And Ira's like, well, I have, but never in Exandria. Like I've been here for them, and I've utilized ones in the Feywild. And he's like, they bring about heightened magics, aberrations kind of can be born, and like unique mythological creatures actually will kind of show up or be born or what have you because of these types of solstices. Um, and Ira also like has this like long spyglass that he takes out, and he's kind of directing Xandis and the ship like which direction to go. And Fern actually pickpockets it from him, which will come up a bit later. Um, but so after talking to him a little bit, they're like, okay, we need basically a sky team and a ground team. And the sky team will be the ones that stay on the ship to basically, turn it into a bomb, while the ground team goes in and hopefully could maybe extract Plane Rider Rin. And they're trying to figure out who should be on what team, but ultimately they land on F.C.G. and Fern being the ones to stay on the ship, with essentially everyone else being on the ground team. Chetney at this point is like, we should make sure no one's like listening to our planning right now. And that kind of brings up Imogen's new circlet that she just bought last episode that kind of prevents being scryed upon. And they're like, do you think this prevents you from being dream scryed on? And they think so. And while they're talking about this, she actually realizes that for the first time, essentially in her adult life, she can
Right.
kind of, because she constantly has to block out all the voices, that because of
Right.
this circlet, she can kind of let those walls down because the circlet's doing it for her. And it's a very like kind of freeing moment for her.
Yeah.
Chet then goes and fills in Captain Xandis on their plan. And Xandis is essentially like, well, we got to make sure the crew and me get off. And they're like, well, who's going to pilot the ship? And so Fern basically is the one that's going to be piloting the ship for this bomb mission. And so Xandis decides to like give her the wheel for an hour to see how it goes. And it doesn't go that well, but they figured they can hopefully make do. So they continue, and they actually park the ship really quick to let the majority of the crew off. Xandis does not get off yet. He's gonna keep piloting until a little bit later. During this time, Imogen sends a message to Keyleth, basically filling her in and kind of trying to get the plan together. And Keyleth says that she's gathering her able-bodied Ashari, and that Imogen needs to just let her know when they're ready, and she'll find a tree. But she's like, hey, just so you know, like our arrival won't be quiet, so like make sure it's time to go. So final preparations are made. Bell's Hells basically half of them put on the Ruby Vanguard robes that they had gotten from that encounter. They also have a couple of Paragon's Call like sets of armor, so they put those on too. They're basically getting full up in their disguises for this infiltration. And Xandus then lands the ship to let off ground team, and Xandus also departs the ship in this moment and, basically wishes them all luck. And Bell's Hells, Sky Team and Ground Team basically wish each other luck, kind of
Yeah.
say their goodbyes,
I
but
don't
not
know,
in like
man.
a not in
Yeah.
like a morbid way.
Yeah.
And one kind of cool moment during this portion is Ashton tries to pickpocket Fern, but is unsuccessful. Like she totally notices that that's what's happening, and she asks like, "What were you looking for?" And Ashton says that they were looking for something personal and irreplaceable, and she gives him a kiss. So a nice little moment.
Yeah.
So the ground team, which is again everyone except for F.C.G, Fern, and Ira, are on a crawler making their way to the excavation site. Um, and they go as far as they can on the crawler because it's kind of loud, and then they park it and continue on foot. And they notice something up ahead, so Chetney goes to scout by himself, and he finds this wreckage of a skyship, which they come to, basically figure out that it is a skyship from Vasselheim that actually had a cathedral on it. And he reports back to the crew after investigating a bit and, seeing that the ship was like shot down and there was like combat that took place on it. And they're like, maybe we should reevaluate our plan because clearly they have defenses in place to deal with skyships if they took down this Vasselheim one. So they want to message the Sky team, but they decide, well, let's keep going, get some more information so we don't have to waste too many message spells, but we will definitely tell them that later. So they keep going. And they start to see an encampment in the distance, and they have made it to basically the edge of the excavation site. And Laudna has pulled out the scrying orb that she has with the Odahan ring, and she can see that it's like pointing downward toward the bottom of the pit. So like they're definitely coming to it. And they can see people, and a crawler actually comes by them, but with a successful deception check, and the fact that they're wearing these disguises, the crawler keeps going. But then they make their way to these actual tents where there's people and actually like a really large automaton. And once again, they get stopped. And Imogen says, we're here with Miss Timmelt, aka her mother. She makes a pretty strong deception check, but there is a member amongst this camp that like recognizes some of the crew, and we figure out that this person is from the fight that Bell's Hells had in Eos in the basement, where they were pretending to have an orgy. So that's that same fight. And so they kind of have analysis paralysis set in because they're trying to do the deception check, but clearly like the members of the Ruby Vanguard aren't just like completely taking it. Imogen even says like, "Oh no, they're double agents. Like, don't worry, don't ask any more questions. Oh, like we gotta go." Um, and instead of just sitting in the analysis paralysis of like, what should we do? They kind of know what's going on. Travis just has Chetney wolf out and just start attacking them. And that's actually where we go to break for the first half.
Yeah, so in the second half, a large portion of it is combat, and it's basically the ground team versus these Ruby Vanguard and what's called a warder, which is this large mechanical construct. I honestly, if you've played Kingdom Hearts, it reminds me of like the really big, fat, mechanical bad guys.
Yes.
So they had this pretty cool action figure for the combat. And they're basically fighting in the middle of this sort of like cover of sandstorm with like these two tents nearby. So again, just keeping in how we typically describe combat, I'll hit like the highlights of it. The one of the Ruby Vanguard mages is going to try to do paralysis on the party, and only Ashton's going to fail the roll, so he's going to be paralyzed. But a quick attack from Chetney is going to break his concentration and will free up Ashton for the remainder of combat. Other than that, the warder's going to pick up one of the tents and throw it at Ashton. But doesn't do too much damage. And basically, as they take down the mages one by one, which is actually fairly easy for the party, they begin to combine their attacks on the large mechanical construct, this warder. They're doing like electric damage, like shocking grasp, things like that. There's a really cool moment from Imogen where she casts command, which I think Laura Bailey gets like the award for using commands like consistently through a campaign so well. But she uses command and tells the warder to grovel. And the warder, I think, rolled like a natural 2 and then has to go prone, basically, which is a massive advantage for the party. And then also, not to mention that Laudna has casted Bane at a higher level to apply Bane to all of the opponents in this combat session. Other than that, they end up taking down the warder, but not before Chetney climbs on its back and considers climbing down into this sort of suit of armor that comprises the warder. And is very glad that he did it because the warder opens up its chest and blows fire across the entire party. All that to say, they defeat it. It sort of crumples down into a heap of metal. And the party's kind of like, we did it, yay. When all of a sudden, Imogen is sort of pulled into the remaining tent and pulled behind like some crates or barrels within the tent. And immediately hears a voice, someone who's basically like, what are you doing? Like, why are you fighting the Vanguard? And Imogen can't see this person, but she is like, hey, we're on the same team. Like, what's going on? And in an amazing moment, I think, especially for people who watch Campaign 2, this person is revealed to be Beauregard, who also nods and reveals the presence of another figure, a certain Caleb, who drops invisibility. And they're pretty much like, who are you? And it's just an awesome moment. I mean, the cast is seeing like their old characters, and Beauregard has some lines where everyone is kind of like, oh yeah, that's Beau. But it's sort of like cracking her knuckles, and she's like jacked. But basically, the party comes down into the tent, and they have a conversation on like what's happening here. And Beauregard and Caleb are like, "Yeah, this has been part of a 10-year journey of following the Cerberus Assembly, and for better or worse, the other members of the Assembly have really avoided getting involved with what lewdness is up to. Maybe intentionally, maybe they don't want to be a part of it." Beau mentions other mages that they've beat up and taken care of, kind of joking that like we can handle lewdness, but also mentions that lewdness has gotten really sloppy over the recent time period that they've been following him, almost too sloppy, almost that he wants to sort of be sloppy for some reason. Other than that, they reveal that when Bell's House mentions that they took out the key in the Feywild, Beau and Caleb reveal that they had come here with Planesrider Ren. They knew about Ren getting captured, but more importantly, they were part of the Shadowfell team that went to go destroy the Shadowfell key. They weren't successful. They did damage it heavily, and unfortunately, some of the members of the party that they were with, who they describe as being members of the Grim Verity, were unfortunately lost in combat. So, coming from the Shadowfell, here they are now to hopefully take care of lewdness. The party asks, why haven't you sort of snuck inside? And they're like, well, we don't want to die, which I don't know what that says about the dangers of sneaking into the heart of this excavation site. But they also sort of swap notes on Bell's Hells mentions their airship plan. And Beau says, well, there is a big sandstorm, so maybe it could work. And mentions the other airship and confirms that it was from Vasselheim that got destroyed. All that to say, they kind of agree, this could be a good distraction mutually. They decide, what, why don't we split up if we can and see if we can sort of create a distraction that sort of splits their forces. And other than that, just sort of like wait for their signal. During this time, there is another crawler that comes by and sees like the crumpled mess of the warder. Imogen, I think, has like a deception 20 to basically say like, oh, it's malfunctioning, we're working on it. And the people in the crawler are like, this old stuff never works anymore, things like that. Other than that, it's still on the brink of the Apogee Solstice, and we end the session there with the parties splitting up and Imogen deciding to message F.C.G. and sort of update the air crew on what's been happening. Very exciting second half to the episode, and that is what happened in episode 50, Red Moon Rising. I want to say like in a Scottish Red Rising. That's what I keep thinking of.
Good book, by the way.
Yeah. So,
go ahead.
I was going to say what you're going to say. If you're checking out just the recap, click the link for our full discussion on the episode. And yeah. So, my friend Will, what'd you think?
I liked it. Of course, it's always, I mean, I say always like it happens all the time, but it's awesome to see, old characters kind of re-pop up. Um, so I'm sure, there's a lot of people like me that even only from that, this was a really fun
Yeah.
episode. It was not that we were like, oh, the solstice is definitely happening episode 50. I even
Yeah.
thought there probably would be a lot of planning this episode before we got into it. So it was a slower paced
Yeah.
planning episode, but I still enjoyed it. We're on the brink of potentially not, I don't want to say campaign ending content, but we're seemingly on the brink of something very big. So
Well, I think
if we
Matt, as is wrapping up, even said something like a lot of threads from campaign 1 and 2 have all led to this,
yeah.
which what a bold thing to say.
Yeah, so
That's crazy.
um yeah, but end of the day, I enjoyed it. Even though we didn't get to it yet, I'm fine with that because I'm
Yeah.
kind of nervous about it happening in general.
Right.
Um, but what about you?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, if we're gonna watch 4+ hours of tabletop adventure, I mean, chances are we're gonna enjoy it. So yeah, I loved it. I do kind of feel a little bummed. It's cool seeing these moments of, like when they were in Whitestone, but I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish I'd gone back and watched those campaigns before now, just to fully experience it. But
Yeah,
I think it was great. I think honestly, what's really fun, other than like the story of D&D, is seeing the players' reactions and just seeing how giddy everyone was around the table with Bo and Caleb. That was
yeah,
just cool. That was a fun moment. So,
yeah, for sure.
um, so,
I
but
thought it
yeah,
was funny. I think it was Laura that was like, "Why is it always Marisha?" Because we have Keyleth, Bo, and all three of her characters all here. Um, which yeah,
he's like,
just
that's my wife. So,
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
just a fun episode in general.
Yeah. Well, and
But
it was cool because we had a little Pixelist prediction last episode where we said, hey, if the Cerberus Assembly, this guy Lewdness, who's a pretty big figure, where's Bo and Caleb?
where they
Where they
at?
at? And
Yeah,
sure enough, it only made sense for them to show up. And so I'm glad they did. Otherwise, it would have made me wonder, like, where are they? Like, why aren't they here?
yeah,
So
for sure. 100%, especially with the stakes of what's going on here. Those two characters who we knew to be like very suspicious and literally investigating the Cerberus Assembly. It would be weird if they weren't. Not that they didn't
yeah,
have to show up, but it would be weird if they weren't involved in some form or
yeah.
fashion.
Well, and
Um,
I wonder. It's been more than 10 years since we got part 2, right? That we watched recently.
I don't know exactly. I
Okay,
don't know if it's
because
been I don't know if it's been more than 10 years since that. I would say it's been probably 10ish years since the
yeah,
end of
okay,
campaign 2 at least.
yeah,
Um,
okay. Because I'm also just wondering what has transpired since part 2 and now present day.
yeah.
Like some of the mages they mentioned beating up, which I don't know if any of those were campaign 2 figures, by the way. But
Yeah. I wanted to talk about that, so I guess now's as good a time as any. They so I guess slight campaign 2 spoilers for those of you that care. I know at least some of you guys are currently watching campaign 2 cuz we've talked about it. But yeah, so there's your warning. I guess I'll do this or something when it's over. I'll probably forget, so maybe Blake remind me if I
yeah,
don't.
sure,
But so the three names mentioned are Halas, Benethar, and Trent. Halas and Trent are names I'm familiar with. Benethar, I'm not. And I even did a quick Google search and I couldn't find anything. So I think that's
yeah.
brand new.
Interesting.
So I guess I'll just start with that one. I'm assuming that's somebody that is post campaign 2 that they have maybe dealt with. Maybe it's, I mean, an easy line to draw would be, is that a Cerberus Assembly member? It's not one that we know of, but there is, in campaign 2 there was a vacancy, or a couple actually, I guess technically, of spots on the Cerberus Assembly. So maybe Benethar was one of those replacements and then was since
Yeah,
dealt with. Um, but Halas was not a member of the Service Assembly, so maybe Benethar wasn't either. Maybe it's just another powerful mage.
Yeah.
unrelated to the assembly. But yeah, that definitely piqued my radar, and I don't know who that is, and so I'm curious. Maybe it's just a name Matt drew out of his hat in the moment to kind of, a list needs three
Yeah.
things, not two, or maybe it's maybe it's something we'll get some light shed on a bit
Yeah.
later. But Trent, and I gave the spoiler warning. Trent was a member. Well, actually, was Trent? Actually, Trent might not have been a member, but Trent was one of the main kind of antagonistic forces in campaign two. They
Oh,
kind of had
okay.
some direct ties to Caleb, and they dealt with him. So
Oh,
that
okay.
one makes
That's cool.
sense. And then
Yeah. Okay.
Halas, this one's interesting. Um, Halas, you and I have talked a lot about the Happy Fun Ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Halas created that, and they actually found him within it. He's like this powerful wizard from like a long time ago, and he accidentally trapped himself like in a gym, like he disembodied himself, and he's like
Yeah.
in this gym now. And in campaign 2 he tried to talk the party into like returning him to his body, but they didn't really trust him, so they didn't. um and there and nothing else really happened. So I thought it was weird that she said like we dealt with Halas. Like, yeah, they ran into him in campaign 2 and he wanted them to return him to his body and they never did. But would you call that dealing with him? So that made me really wonder, like, have
Sure. He
they
must have.
done
Yeah.
something post campaign 2 to like deal with him? And I don't know
Just
if,
from.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just from what you've told me, it sounds like there has to be more there after campaign 2. Because was there also the association with the Cerberus Assembly with Halas?
Not like not like directly, no, but he is like a
Okay.
really powerful
Yeah.
mage.
So presumably returns to his body, teams up with lewdness in the gang, and then gets his head handed to him at some point. I don't
I don't
know.
know. I don't know if I would necessarily jump to that direct of a connection or not. I mean, it's
Yeah.
totally
Okay.
possible, but I would. That language does make me lean towards there's been something with Halas post campaign 2, but maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe again, maybe just in the moment of Matt trying to think of powerful mages the Mighty Nine has dealt with,
Yeah.
Halas came to mind, and so he just listed Halas. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys think that
Hmm.
there's been post C2 Halas interactions, or if that was just referring to the stuff that happened in campaign 2.
Yeah.
Um,
Super interesting though.
yeah, but because I mean, especially knowing Matt, like a lot of times those little breadcrumbs are more than just in the moment him thinking of something. Like a lot of times those are
Yeah.
deliberate.
I
Um,
wonder if we'd ever get like a one shot of like the days before now, like what's even like led
that would be
Caleb
cool.
and Bo to, come to Marquette, but especially to this excavation site. I mean,
Yeah.
but here's what's interesting. They're freaking powerful, right? Like I loved Orem doing what's the fighter skill?
Oh yeah.
But
Like know
basically,
your enemy or whatever.
yeah, what's their level? Their level, and that's like much higher than yours. He's like, great, so level 9. So, what level were they? Were they 17 at the end of part 2?
That's what I was just trying to look up because I think they were 15 at the end of C2, and I think they were a little bit more powerful in that reunited special.
Yeah, I think they
I would say
were.
17 max though.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
Um,
let's see if we can just find it real
yeah,
quick.
let's see here. Campaign Mighty 9 character sheets.
Uh,
Yeah, level 17.
17. So yeah,
Okay, so it's been however many years since then. I'm sure they aren't like on Vox Machina power, but maybe close. Because Vox Machina is level 20, right?
presumably. Um,
Yeah, okay.
so which who knows how it works, like if they've just been chilling retired, do you lose power? Like could they have
Right.
deteriorated in levels a bit? So yeah, seemingly at least the Mighty Nine is at least level 17. um Now while we're here, um Caleb and Bo were the two that were focused in investigating this, so it makes sense that they're the ones that are here, and it's not like the full-fledged Mighty Nine. But on the same page, if they, and maybe they don't realize truly what's happening here, but if they do, wouldn't you think they would be calling in their friends? Like again, oh, I forgot to do the spoiler thing, but this is spoilers, I guess. Still, especially Bo and Yasha are married. Like they're,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, like at least wouldn't you call Yasha in if you realized what was
yeah,
happening here? Um, and I guess we'll just get rid of the spoilers now for anybody that happened to be paying attention.
yeah. You
So yeah, I
would
wonder
think
if
so. I'm not
and
sold that they haven't been called.
yeah, because this is
'Cause-
like a covert op. Like she was undercover, so it's not like the whole gang could be there undercover. So
but like
maybe they're just
maybe,
a message away or something.
well, maybe after the shadow fell, maybe they called him in and was like, "We're going to need some extra help. Like this has been a
Yeah,
train wreck," you know? Because it's interesting. It definitely feels like we're heading to like an Avengers Assemble moment
yeah,
thing, because we've talked endlessly about the stakes and the size of power of the opponent, and how Bell's Hells is so out of range here, like
yeah,
just so below, like no hope at all, with like all the exaltants and like people coming to this area, Paragon's Call, Ruby Vanguard, Lewdness, Otahan, Liliana. I mean, like all of these things, like no way. And so Keyleth being involved, Mighty Nine being involved. I mean, definitely Ira being involved. Hopefully, no double cross. Um, it definitely feels like it's an Avengers Assemble moment coming,
for sure.
which I'm all
Which
for. Let's do it.
yeah, which kind of leads me back into the same discussion I'm sure people are tired of us having at this point. So maybe we don't have to stay too long in it, but like what happens after this? This feels like the end of the campaign type of moment, but it doesn't like if the past is any indication, we shouldn't be really anywhere near the end of the campaign yet. But you know, they did say we're doing things a little different this time around. Like expect some surprises, expect some changes. Like I don't know. I can't help but go into this feeling like it's in-game stuff. And so what does that freaking mean? Like, you know, like where do we go from here? Do they have a chance of being successful? Is this just the catalyst to what's going to the rest of the campaign's going to be about? But yeah, you're totally right. It definitely feels like the Avengers are assembling and it's just weird to think of something so important and big happening
Yeah,
halfway
and
through, if you will.
right. No, you're right. It definitely feels like in game for sure. Um, and honestly, every famous character they bring back, the more nervous I am.
Yeah, me
I mean,
too.
it's like, oh, Caleb and Bo. Oh wait, I really like them. Like,
Yeah.
well, could Matt kill one of these characters from campaign 1 or 2? I mean, it's certainly possible, right? I mean, I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing them make it through this without there being really heavy losses.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that man, I don't know. I know they kind of joked about it. I know it wasn't intentional, but like the goodbyes between the air and the ground team, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I kind of felt like that might be the last time some of these characters are going to have like and like Ashton and Fern, like that sweet kiss, and just,
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I mean, it totally could. Like they were acting like, well, we're not saying goodbye, but like,
Yeah.
and not that they like would intentionally be, but like that's definitely on the table, right? Like, they're this is like a suicide mission in a lot of ways. So like, that might have been a goodbye between some of them. And yeah, on the that's not even to mention the other campaign characters, which is just a really interesting dynamic to think about. Because I know that whole table trusts each other, and especially Matt explicitly or implicitly, whatever they trust him. Um, so I think that they
Explicit and implicit, import export.
Art Vandalay.
Yeah.
So I think that like they trust Matt, and you know they trust Matt. So I, I don't think that like it would come as a complete surprise if like one of their older campaign characters died. But at the same time, I can't imagine that he would like he I feel like he would want them to have some agency in that versus them just being like, oh, you know, Bo died, and like, you know, Marisha didn't even have any type of like agency in that
Yeah,
decision, you know.
I mean, knowing how talented Matt is, and I'm sure the communication, this is not it's scripted, you know, which I love how
Right.
they joked about that when Ashley Johnson's like, wait, what are we doing? Like, and like Matt was even just like, Okay, guys. um, I would, because I know with my players, I have conversations like, hey, like, tell me, what would you be your comfort with, like, these kinds of things being in flux?
Mhm.
And not like, if this happened, what would you do? But
Right.
like, hey, tell me how important is this to you? Um, and so I can only imagine that Matt's had similar conversations of like, hey, like, what's your comfortability with, characters in the past, like finding out in the future that they've passed on? Like, is that something that would upset you? Or maybe phrased differently, like, what would you hope to have been true about your character 20 years later?
Yeah.
Not that he's like doing this sort of like HR styled, like, and tell me what
Right.
is, but I just assume that conversations are happening.
100%.
Um, and so I would be not surprised if they are surprised, but also have come to terms with like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that happening. The question is, will the audience be okay with it? Because I do know that's a tension where people are really pissed off that something happened, and it's like, guys, it's our D&D table,
Yeah.
So
Bro, I can only imagine the toxic takes that would be thrown around if somebody from a past campaign died. Like, I mean, not that people are allowed to feel how they want to feel, but I just there would be coming out of the woodwork with something like that. But yeah, I'm totally with you. If that does happen, I think there were definitely conversations had, not as in like, hey, just so you know, next episode I'm killing Bo, not
yeah,
that, but like the appropriate conversations were
yeah,
had.
yeah,
But even with even knowing that was the case, I still, especially now that we know those dice rolls he had Liam and
yes,
Marisha make coming out of the
yes,
Feywild were for
yes,
Bo and Caleb,
right. I
just
forgot to
showing
mention
that
that.
he even gave them agency in that moment. I can't
Hmm.
imagine that they would have zero agency in a potential life and death situation. Now, how he would manifest that into the campaign, like maybe he has them make rolls again, but doesn't tell them what they're for, type of thing. Or, and this is something we've I really don't know if I even think this is possible, but or maybe we do get Exandria Unlimited Mighty Nine Apogee Solstice, and like we get like maybe they take a break from campaign 3 after next episode, and we get like a one episode of the Vox Machina members that are there, one of the Mighty Nine members that are there, and
Right.
maybe our Crown Keepers crew or something. So I think there's a lot of options for things happening there, but all that to say, I do think it's on the table that like anyone could die that we know to be here.
Hmm.
Um, which just makes it all that more crazy.
Yeah, and scary.
Yeah.
So I don't typically watch live, but I'm like, man, do I really need to like make sure I can watch this Thursday? I don't know, but um, so yeah, it's pretty wild. Who's to say what? I mean, they're right on the edge of the camp. They're right on the edge of the Apogee Solstice. Matt's confirmed that they don't quite know when it happens or when it starts, I guess. And seemingly directionless, not like at fault of the party, but kind of like, okay, what do we do now? Especially if this airship plan is a no go, which seems to possibly be the case.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
oh,
thought,
oh, oh, sorry. I just have a different conversation, but I don't want to jump from what we're talking about.
okay, well, don't forget, but real quick on the airship thing, I was wondering if it was Matt even almost being nice with them coming upon that wrecked skyship,
Yeah.
of giving them a little hint, maybe. And not to say that's definitely what it was, but it could be. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking the same thing that like, these are very, very powerful people. Like they have ways of dealing with the skyship. That's not to say that they still can't make this work, especially with a storm being in the mix too, of maybe giving them some cover or given distractions on the ground, freeing up space for the ship to come in. But I'm interested to see if they still go for it, given that warning that they.
Yeah, I interpreted it that way too, as a warning from Matt, which is what a great DM does, is kind of informs people as to the level of difficulty of the task that they're, wanting
Yeah.
to do. And so I think it was a nice a nice little breadcrumb that Matt created to basically say like, hey, there's, this is not like level 4 D&D where someone's like, they describe like something like totally outside the realm of possibility, and then I kill all 4 goblins at the same time. It's like, I roll a d20 for that. This feels, like those old like stories of like people playing D&D where it's like they like meet the king and they're like, I want to do a persuasion to take the crown, and it's like this would never happen. Not that it is that, but in my mind I kind of put it in that vein of like Matt being like, all right guys, it's not really gonna be doable. So I internalized it the same way.
Yeah, or at the very least, like you said, letting them know like like what the DC of something like that's going to be. It's going to be high. But just the imagery real quick of the skyship with a cathedral on it sounded so cool. Like it's destroyed, so we don't really get to see it, but I would love to see that. Like, not that we'll ever be in a situation where it comes up again, but I just thought that was that evoked such cool imagery.
Give me like Final Fantasy vibes.
Yeah, for sure.
It was really cool.
And it was cool to know that Vasselheim was in the loop enough, let's say, to be investigating. Because I know that's something we talked about in the past of like, with this big type of event, like wouldn't, Vasselheim being majorly connected to a number of the gods, like wouldn't they be, not that they know, not that they're omniscient, but wouldn't they be like a bit more concerned if they heard these types of rumors? So I did like the evidence of them having checked or tried to check it out.
Right. Yeah.
Which may pave the way for like what's the word I'm looking for? Like Gandalf riding over the mountains at the Helm's Deep of like a Vasselheim trump card, maybe to help them at some point of like the reinforcements coming from Vasselheim type of thing.
I'd be satisfied with that. Yeah. Dude, we're going to have a crazy battle, I feel like. This is going to be nuts.
Yeah. I'm interested to see how long this next episode is.
Yeah. Or if it's like even the next 2 episodes. I mean, it's going to be definitely a lot to get through for sure.
True. I definitely think that the events of the solstice could take place over multiple days in campaign time.
Yeah.
So obviously in real time too, it'll take place over multiple weeks in that case. But yeah, I definitely think that like it might not necessarily just be a solstice is happening and it ended. I could see it being an extended celestial event.
And it does. We've mentioned this before. It does feel like possibly we'll get some of these reinforcements battling with lewdness and others, and potentially a Bell's Hells rematch with Otahan plus Liliana.
Because we do know that the Mighty Nine crew are going from the opposite end. They said like we'll meet in the middle maybe. So they're going to be doing their own thing, and we know that Keyleth is coming through via a tree. So they're not actually going to be like hands clasped with Keyleth. I mean, I guess they always still could be if she shows up, but like her and her army are going to be showing up not where they currently are.
Right.
One more quick thing before, hopefully you didn't forget where you wanted to go. But this kind of goes in with the reinforcements and stuff. I don't know if you saw this, you probably didn't, but I think they announced like some new merch or something. I saw it on Instagram, and Robbie Damon was the one modeling the new merch. So I was like, was Robbie in the studio recently? So I don't know if that's like Pepe Silva, because they have a relationship. Maybe this shoot was 6 months ago, and he does have short hair though in it. But so I just thought maybe
we stand Robbie Damon.
Dorian a little bit.
Bring back Dorian, yeah. Dude, I would freaking riot if Dorian was back in a good way. I mean, he's probably my favorite character. I said that up to everybody. What am I doing? Whatever. Hey, do you think Orym and him are best buds? Or
I mean, we know that Dorian had a crush on somebody, which if you didn't know this, Robbie revealed that in like one of his not Talks Machina, whatever the new show is that they have, a Four-Sided Dive, I think.
Yeah.
He revealed that.
I said Critical Role. And I was like, that's not it.
That's it. In an episode of Four-Sided Dive that he went on, like shortly after he originally departed the show, one of the questions was like, was Dorian feeling anybody? And he did reveal that he had a crush, but he didn't say who it was. So I think Orum's a pretty, I mean, it honestly could be almost anyone. But I think there is some evidence to be made for a Aurum thing, because you know they're the ones that talk on the stones to each other. I feel like, I mean, it could go either
they're
way. It
very
could be
sweet.
totally friendship vibes.
Yeah,
But I do
which
think the possibility
yeah,
is there.
okay, yeah. Orm's very sweet to him, but Orm's also like
Yeah.
sweet old dad vibes.
Right.
But which also reminds me of, I was talking to somebody I ran into the day who also watches Critical Role, and this was the last episode, and we talked about Imogen and Laudna, and they're just like really great conversation. And he's like, "Man, they're such good friends."
Well,
And I was like, which, you know, it was what we're kind of talking about here.
yeah.
And I was like, well, do you think that they're, and he's like, I think it's pretty heavily implied they're like sisters. And I was like, well, now am I the one overreading this, or,
Well,
you know?
okay, I'm glad you brought this up, because you know we talked about this in our last episode, and I don't know if you saw some of the comments on that video, but a couple people got into it as well, and they were saying, because, and to set the stage here, one of the things we said in that video was like, we've kind of been wondering, will they, won't they? And then there is this moment last episode, or 2 episodes ago now, where they like tell each other what they mean to each other, like, you're my
Yeah.
tether, like, in this world,
Right.
in the next, I love you.
Yeah.
And even though that was all said, it didn't really feel like this moment of like, yes, we
Yeah.
finally are admitting it. You know, it just felt kind of just how it has always felt. And what some people were bringing up in the comments is that they are like platonic soulmates. So like they do, like, you know, care for each other. And I don't mean to misquote anybody, that might not be explicitly what anyone said, but that was the vibe. Or like aromantic soulmates. So that being said, because we do see Laudna, like, and I know it's just, you know, fun RP, but like she's pretty flirty with the Nightmare King. So like,
Yeah.
maybe they are just friends. Doesn't feel right, but maybe
I
there
like
is
how that
room for
platonic.
romantic.
Yeah. To be clear, I'm okay with anything, but
Right.
I will say something that, and this is going to be totally undone if the two of them end up being in love, and then Robbie and Liam's characters end up being in love. But I will say, for me personally, I think there's something really sweet about stories that portray like deep, intimate friendships.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of forms of media, it's like you have the casual friends and then like the lovers, and there's not always an in between.
Mm-hmm.
But something that, you know, if we use a lot of his words, like a tether, like something that's unbreakable and immovable between two deep rooted friends, I think that's really awesome and really beautiful. And that's not like it's saying it has to be that, but all that to say, I would be okay if it was a romantic, or as in not romantic.
Right.
But anyway, didn't expect to talk about those relationships today, but
but yeah,
anyway.
and yeah, let us know down below what y'all's thoughts on all these potential pairings are. And not to get too lost on it, especially since it didn't really happen this episode, but one thing especially you have brought up, but I'm right there with you, is I really like the dynamic between Ashton and Laudna. So
Yeah,
I would
for
like,
sure.
and not that has to go to a romantic place or anything, but I would love to see that more developed as well.
Right, everybody's so sweet to each other. I just don't want to see anyone die, but I feel like we're heading to that. So, which brings me to what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I've been working on a theory. I've mentioned it, that it feels like Sam Riegel is not shoehorning, but is comfortable with the idea of sacrificing F.C.G. And I've mentioned it previously. So we'll have to piece together all these sound bites when it happens. But we know F.C.G. has the ticking time bomb. He has the energy source that's unstable, that isn't said to be atomic, but is like incredibly devastating if it was to like go off.
He's got like an explosive inside of him, basically.
Yeah. We know that he is incredibly sacrificial in the micro, in like giving up his gold. Oh, I don't need it. Like, take mine, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the macro, in times where they've had to convince other people for a trade, and he said like, yeah, you can trade me. Like, you can give me away. Incredibly, you know, humble and generous with it's just an amazing person. Even being a robot,
What's with the
amazing,
quotes, man? He's a person.
an amazing soul. Excuse me. I was describing him as FCG would want me to.
Right,
So
okay.
there. And then we know Ashton a few episodes ago confided to, I think, Laudna about his concern that he was going to have to keep FCG from trying to sacrifice himself. And just like this guy just keeps trying to sacrifice himself, it's like, stop. Which is when I said, like, bro, are we heading to like a big, is it, I can't think of the guy's name. StarCraft 1, like crashing the ship into the Overlord.
Oh yeah.
I could see FCG doing that. But here's the added point. I know this is so Pepe Silvio, but the jokes about the Changebringer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The jokes about the Changebringer, and which we didn't see the coin flip, which I wouldn't put it past him to lie for the sake of humor, but also future story point. There was like the joke about like, oh, we have to take the ship down, and FCG says, well, we got to get the crew off, right? And Chetney jokes like, oh, well, no, it's let's just assume they're dead. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. And he's like, well, no, the Changebringer. I think someone says like, ask the Changebringer what they would want to happen. Flips the coin, gives a look of like, oh dear. Yeah. Everyone laughs, and later, or maybe in the same conversation, FCG says, no, I think what's actually happening is the Changebringer saying, be prepared, someone will have to make a sacrifice like in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
yeah,
I'm just like, bro, like, get off it, FCG. Like, why you keep sending us this? I just feel like it's so being heavily implied that FCG is coming to a point where Sam Riegel is going to be totally comfortable with, I want to sacrifice myself to save my friends. If the moment arises.
Yeah, 100%. I was gonna bring up the Changebringer stuff if you didn't there at the end, because I think that's I think he was being like, the reactions were truthful. I don't think he like and again, I don't remember the exact flip, but regarding like the sacrifices where he doesn't tell us what it was, but his eyes are like, oh gosh. I think we can trust that, and so that the answer he was given was that, like, yeah, sacrifices. So I think that, like, even though that was kind of like played off as funny, like in character, in world, FCG puts a lot of stock into what that coin's been telling him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been kind of used as a recurring bit, but I think his character has been looking for this direction, and it hasn't failed them yet. So I think that they believe that. So I could totally see, should the opportunity like present itself, that FCG would jump on the grenade, as it were.
Yeah.
And he's in a great position to do it, being one of two members on Sky Team. It's not going to be Fern.
Yeah.
I don't think she
would.
We know in
Fern. We know Ira said that he can Bamf or Dimension Door himself, and Fern, or one other, maybe one or two. So I guess that's why they left those people, because they could. Mm-hmm. But could see Ira taking Fern and see ya.
Yeah. No, it's what's. I mean, Matt could like, one, we talked about how hard, what the high DC of what that plan even is. So I think they're definitely going to run into some opposition if they do decide to still go for it. So I'm wondering what the circumstances would have to be where like someone would have to stay behind, because Fern can transform into a flying creature. Ira can teleport. Not that we can trust Ira. Like, I think he's just gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be too concerned with making sure other people get off that ship safe, but we do at least have Fern. So like, I wonder what the set of circumstances would be that it wasn't feasible for them to just do whatever they needed to and then get out. But should that get set up, and Sam's totally the player to do that too. Like, not that all of them wouldn't like do what's best for the crew, but like, especially Sam would he would make that self-sacrifice for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm nervous about that, but yeah, I think you're totally on point with all that.
Well, that's my prediction. So we'll see. Other stuff from this episode?
Let me go through my notes really quick. Okay, a couple things I wanted to talk about. was just specifically, we've talked about this before, but like what lewdness, what he actually wants here, because that, and you brought this up during the recap, but I thought it was really interesting how they were like, he's being uncharacteristically sloppy, and they didn't know if he was there, which I don't think I don't think we can look too much into that yet, because it's totally possible he's there and they just haven't seen him, or maybe he's arriving before it happens and he just hasn't arrived yet. I mean, he's a powerful mage, he can probably teleport, so it's not like he, needed to be there yet. Um, but what if he just never shows up? And that makes me think like, we've talked about all these Rudisborns being drawn to this area potentially as a sacrifice, potentially as a power source. What if it's beyond that? What if he's just looking? What if you don't have to be Rudisborn? You just have to be like powerful. And now we have Keyleth here. Now we have members of the Mighty Nine here. Like this is attracting very powerful people to this spot. What if it's to
Bro.
be sacrificed in some way? And so lewdness, yeah, he's not there and he's not going to be there because what if that key just like or something,
Wow.
I know
Yeah.
that's like a lot of stretches, and I'm not like saying that's what I think's going to happen, but I'm nervous by these little pieces that could potentially be lined up. Because why would he
Yeah.
be
It's kind
sloppy
of,
all of a sudden, especially with like the most
yeah,
important thing coming to
a
bear?
years long plan, decades long plan. Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
centuries with how
Yeah.
old he could
And
be.
for how much, I can't think of the word, how much carefulness was put in play with like transporting the residuum and the broomstone and all these things that were happening under the table. You know, it, to be shady, to be sloppy now. Yeah. There's something definitely off
Yeah,
or interesting about that.
some done that up there.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I'm assuming it was either Caleb or Bo that told us this, but there was like a large stockpile of dunamis
Yeah.
for the key, which we knew that through Gianna Hexam and the Paragon's Call shipments, that we knew that that dunamantic liquid had some part to play, but now we know for sure that it's like here with the key. Um,
Well, and also explains why lewdness was so passive to Imogen and Fern in the room with Astani, or I can't think of the professor.
oh yeah, I don't think it was well, maybe it was a stunning. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't think of the person, which one it is, but I'm mixing up character names. But and that he was just like, yeah, come up, come see us, come into town, come see us.
Yeah,
Rather than just like, muddling their brains too. If he recognizes the power of Imogen, it's like, hey, that's another soul for the cause. Come on up. So
does Imogen's mother know that she's there? Like, does she know that yet?
I don't think so. And we know also that she has a multitude of times told her to stay away.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, since she does seem to be somewhat high up on the totem pole, maybe she knows the truth. If there is a hidden truth of what's going on here, maybe she knows, and so she's like, "Do not come here."
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that she would tell her not to come there anyway. More than likely, just because it's dangerous beyond a potential sacrifice situation.
Where did all the dunamantic liquid come from again? Did they say?
Well, I think we don't know like where it originated, but they're smuggling it, and Hexam was like part of that. So I'm assuming they somehow got it from somewhere in the empire, the dynasty rather,
Okay.
the Kryn dynasty. But we know that this is stuff that dating back to campaign 2 that we know that lewdness was interested in. He was um, investigating all these ancient cities and the beacons, which
Yeah.
the beacons are what kind of the Dunamanic stuff not that it like literally flows from it, but like that's at the heart of all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it can deal with timey wimey time travel is a weird soup stuff. Like, so I wonder if there's even an element of, well, one, we know the cast themselves have some potions of possibility which allow you to like do a reroll.
Yeah.
And that's basically because of like timey wiminess, essentially, is like the meaning behind it. Like you're taking this path of possibility instead of that one. This one where you succeeded instead of this one where you failed. We know lewdness apparently has access to a lot of this stuff. So like any battle with him, like it's crazy to think of what he could be capable of in terms of he probably has his own potion of possibility at the very least.
I wonder if there's some kind of. Oh yeah, good point. By the way, I wonder if we're heading to like an Edge of Tomorrow type scenario where like the party gets right to the key and it explodes and everyone dies, but the party gets like washed over with this dunamantic, liquid, and then they wake up and it's like 2 weeks before again, or maybe it's after. I don't know, but like they're the only survivors because of this. I don't know, dude. I just wonder because didn't
I
they say there's
mean,
a big stockpile like up with the key or
yeah,
something? Or
yeah.
maybe I'm thinking residuum. Actually,
No,
I'm not
no, there
sure.
is. That's where that was my jumping off point here. Is that either I think it was Caleb or Bo, but told us there's a large stock of distilled dunamis that's like for the key.
Yeah,
So like I wonder. I mean that the possibilities are literally endless with that stuff. But I wonder if it could also be like a time travel situation to like go back to when he was imprisoned, like, and that's how we can undo it, type of thing, or
yeah. Also, yeah, and it's funny Laura Bailey being like, why Mauritius characters? It'd be interesting after the fact if both of her characters are dead. You know, after
Yeah.
we're done.
Yikes.
So, I did like the detail, by the way. I know we're kind of wrapping up. The detail of the distractions that have been happening all over Exandria that the Ruby Vanguard has been like secretly doing.
Mhm.
Which I don't think like the attack on Terra or below Terra, whatever, if that wasn't necessarily implied to be that distraction, but it did seem because we were talking about like what were they wanting to do with the portal and like and I still think it's possible they could have been trying to do something to the portal, but I also could see it being that distraction just to split forces and attention, basically.
True, because we know Keyleth is showing up with whoever's left,
Hmm.
essentially. So they're not showing up at full strength. So
Right.
yeah, it totally could have just been a weaken the defenses type of situation. Um, but yeah, man, it's crazy that we're still leading right up to this, and it could really like we don't even really know like we know it's at stake, I guess, but we really don't even know like what lewdness is trying to accomplish.
I just envision them like starting the episode, and Matt's like, "All right, guys, enjoy," and then he steps away, and then Brittany Mulligan steps up, and like everyone's like, "Oh no!" And he's like,
Fire.
"Fire!" It's like the dot dot dot, not the dot dot dot.
I'd be okay with
So-
that if Matt sat at the table and Dariax and the rest of the crown keepers were showing up.
Oh my gosh, dude! Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool.
Or
Oh
maybe
man,
Matt plays Essek or something.
yeah. Oh man. Apparently, there's another Brennan Lee Mulligan moment um, in the children's stories for Worlds Beyond. By the way, I think at the having not watched it or listened to it yet, excuse me, I saw a Reddit thread where someone it was like titled, "What is Brennan Lee Mulligan like hurting people?" So who knows? It'd be I don't know. It'd be crazy to have another DM come in, which we've talked about before. Um, certainly, I guess not in such a big moment, but
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's a fun idea, but I really don't see that happening with what could be like
yeah.
the defining moment in like Critical Role canon. Which I know we're wrapping up, but real quick, I meant to say this earlier when we were talking about the implications of what this could mean. It could be like a world altering, shattering event because if Critical Role continues, which it's going to, beyond campaign 3, I mean, it's totally, I could see Matt being like, well, I've done 3 campaigns a decade in Exandria. I'm ready for something new. And so what better than like this slate clearing event potentially where you could like stay in the same continuum but like do something completely new. Um I mean, I don't want there to be a TPK or like a world reset, but I think that like anything's on the table.
Or even like a time jump, like hundreds of years, thousands of years. He's
Yeah.
mentioned wanting to do like the Exandrian version of like the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
like what that would look like. And it's just an offhand comment, by the way. He wasn't like for people listening. Don't expect like brass the campaign, but anyway. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think you're onto something for sure with that.
I'm nervous.
Me too.
That's all I got to say.
Let us know y'all's predictions. We're definitely excited and apprehensive, but we're here for the ride. So
Yeah, and I know you said you were considering watching live, so I know if you're able to make that happen, you should join us, and also all of you guys should join us, because in our Discord, which I'll link that down below, there's a group of us that live chat during every CR episode, and it's a bunch of fun, and I can only imagine how crazy it's going to get if this Solstice does pop off. So come join us.
Yeah, for sure.
And anything else?
That's it. I was actually trying to see if they had their programming posted for this week. Because sometimes they post it in advance, and I guess every week they post it, but okay, there's no notice of an extended runtime. Okay. Because sometimes when it's a long one, they say extended runtime, but they didn't.
Yeah.
For this one.
But it is out though, the programming schedule.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's 8th year anniversary, episode 51. So yeah.
I already forgot that it was the anniversary. I wonder, beyond what's actually happening in the episode, I wonder what they're going to do for that. Because usually, I'm not saying they'll come in costumes or anything, but they'll do something. So it should be an interesting episode for a number of reasons, for sure.
Yeah.
All
right.
Well, we need a thumbnail, and I'm just kind of scared.
Me too.
So should we
scare faces?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna do the
beautiful.
All right. Well, I think that does it. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll be watching Thursday, and we'll go from there.
All right, y'all. Till then.